Picture this. A drummer walks into a deli, holds a secret corporate meeting, fires his own guitarist without him even being there, and declares himself the new owner of one of the biggest rock bands of the 80s. Sounds insane, right? It happened, and it ended in total disaster. This is Bobby Blotzer, and this is the story of the most brutal band divorce in rock history.
All right, now tell me about Ratt and Roll. What's Ratt and Roll? Come on, tell me.
Anybody can rock and roll, but only we can rat and roll.
Yeah. Plus, we were asked so many, over and over, questions of, are you heavy metal? Are you this? Are you that? Are you this? We're Ratt and Roll. That's it.
Ratt ruled the 80s with platinum albums, MTV dominance, and songs like Round and Round that still get airplay today. But behind the glam and the hairspray, pure chaos. According to Bobby, guitarist Warren DeMartini had serious control issues. He made it impossible for anyone to do their job without his approval. During the recording of their 2010 album Infestation, Warren pushed for songs the rest of the band didn't want, and when he didn't write the first or second single, he turned on the entire record. Bobby claims Warren convinced singer Stephen Pearcy that the album sucked, even though it didn't. It was pure control freak behavior. The creative battles were constant. The business decisions were a nightmare. Bobby flat out says Warren and Stephen were just not good business guys. But here's the thing. It wasn't always like this. Bobby says he and the late Robin Crosby were the only reasonable, level-headed guys in the band.
I was very at ease with getting business done with Robin. He was very reasonable, level-headed, and I think him and I were the only ones that were like that in this band. I'm not trying to sound conceited or anything like that, but that's, in my opinion, that's the way it was. Stephen and Warren, not good, man. They're just not good business guys.
When Robin died, everything changed. The chemistry flipped. Without Robin there to balance things out, the power struggles between Bobby and Warren exploded. And then came the real breaking point: money. When grunge murdered hair metal in the early 90s, everything collapsed overnight. Ratt went from packed arenas to half-empty shows. Bobby remembers playing venues that could hold 16,000 people, but only drawing 7,000. The vibe was dead. It wasn't fun anymore. The band broke up in '92. Bobby had properties and a monthly overhead of $25,000 to $30,000. When you're not working and the money's only going out, it disappears fast. He'd go up to Hollywood and run into guys from Whitesnake, Motley Crue, all these multi-platinum bands, and everyone had the same story. Dude, can you believe this? It was humbling. Actually, it was worse than humbling. It was brutal. They reunited in '97 and toured solid for over a decade. Things were working. Bobby was back on his feet. But around 2011, it stopped again. No tours, no income, and Bobby was bleeding money watching his bandmates keep Ratt off the road. He says by 2014, it had been years of watching Warren and Stephen keep the band locked down. "This ain't fair, man. Ain't fair to the fans," Bobby said. The fans wanted to see Ratt. He wanted to play, but nothing was happening. So in the summer of 2015, Bobby made his move. He launched something called Bobby Blotzer's Ratt Experience at a small rock bar in Vegas called Vamped. Brand new lineup, hired guns, nobody you'd ever heard of.
They weren't willing to cut a deal. That side, Warren, I'm amenable. I'm open-minded. I don't know what more to say here. So,
Okay.
Look, this is my life here, man, 35 years. I want to go tour it. I have ownership in it. Sorry for anybody that doesn't dig it, but you know what? Everybody that comes out loves it to the shows. These internet people, and I don't go on and read anything. So anybody that wants to type shit about me, have at it, because I know I don't care. I don't read it. You know what I look at? Every night, 8,000, 5,000, 3,000, sometimes 15,000 people that are having a friggin' blast. And that's all that matters to me. That's what I'm on this planet to do, not deal with all this crap. These guys can't get over themselves and get business done. They're very underhanded with a lot of the stuff that they're doing. I can tell you that for sure.
At first, it looked like just another nostalgia tribute act, former rock star playing the hits with random musicians for bar crowds. But a few months later, late September, Bobby dropped the bomb. He announced he'd taken control of the entire Ratt trademark. This wasn't a tribute act anymore. This was the real Ratt. His version, his rules, his band now.
We're keeping it alive, man. We're keeping the Ratt thing going. Y'all loving the band? Anybody? Because I love these guys. We're having a good time. We want to keep Ratt out for y'all. For me, us, everybody out there. We don't even get in our car going, oh, DVD, CD, tape. Some of you guys still play tapes. I know that.
And here's the absolutely sneaky play he used to do it. Early September 2015, Jerry's Famous Deli in Studio City, California. Not a boardroom, not a law office, a deli. Bobby called an official shareholders meeting for the company that supposedly owned the Ratt name, a company called WBS Incorporated that he and Warren co-owned. The catch? Warren DeMartini wasn't there. He couldn't attend. So at this meeting, at a deli, surrounded by pastrami and pickles, Bobby held a vote. He elected himself chairman of the board and president. He removed Warren from his position entirely. Then he demoted Warren to vice president of guitars. Not even a real executive position, just a made-up title to push him out. A corporate coup over sandwiches, without the other shareholder even in the room. Bobby's defense? WBS Inc. owed almost $50,000 in debt, with only a couple $100 sitting in the bank account. And Warren, according to Bobby, had created total gridlock by refusing to tour. Bobby even claimed through his lawyers that Warren had suffered hearing loss and couldn't play guitar like he once did. That's how personal this got. But this wasn't really about money or hearing loss. This was about decades of Warren controlling everything. And Bobby finally found a way to cut him out. Warren sued immediately, within days. So did bassist Juan Crucier, who saw exactly what Bobby was trying to do. The courts went back and forth like a tennis match. First, around October, a judge in Los Angeles blocked Bobby from touring as Ratt. Temporary injunction. Bobby lost. But then, a month later, everything flipped. A different ruling came down. The court said Bobby's company, WBS Inc., did own the trademark rights, and he could perform as Ratt. Warren lost. Juan lost. Bobby gloated hard. He said, the chokehold misappropriation of power has ended. He wasn't done either. He taunted Juan Crucier directly, saying, suing you's a dirty job, but I'm the man to do it. And now the absolute chaos began. There were two versions of Ratt touring America at the exact same time. Bobby's version with a completely new lineup, and then Stephen Pearcy and Juan's version with the original guys. Fans had no idea which Ratt was real. Venues were confused. Shows were being canceled because promoters didn't know which group they were actually booking. It was total pandemonium. And Bobby, he wasn't holding back on the insults. He called the competing lineup Three Blind Mice. He nicknamed Stephen Pearcy the Crypt Keeper, and publicly mocked his stage clothes, saying watching him perform was like watching Groundhog Day, and it made him want to puke. He compared Juan Crucier's appearance to Danny DeVito wearing a headband. This wasn't business anymore. This was war. Personal, ugly, scorched earth war.
Things have been disintegrating in Ratt since we were 16 years old, okay? We got 5 chiefs, no Indians, but this chemistry that we have produces so many great songs. You know what I mean? I don't know what the fuck it is, but we have a great time with the music, which overshadows that we think each other are a bunch of clowns.
Stephen, Warren, and Juan fired back through the courts. More lawsuits, more legal filings. The whole thing was turning into a circus. 2 Ratts, competing tours, brutal public insults flying back and forth. And then the nuclear bomb dropped that destroyed Bobby's entire plan. Lawyers started digging deep into the old paperwork, way back into the history of the band, and they found something, a massive, critical mistake. Years earlier, back in 1997, Bobby, Warren, and Stephen had supposedly transferred the Ratt trademark to their company, WBS Inc. That transfer was supposed to give the company ownership, but there was a problem. They never got Juan Crucier's signature. And here's why that mattered. Way back in 1985, when Ratt was first blowing up, the 5 original members had signed a partnership agreement, a legal partnership. And buried in that agreement was a clause that said any major decisions, including transferring trademarks, required unanimous approval from all partners. All partners, not just some, all of them. Without Juan's signature on that 1997 transfer, it was invalid, worthless, which meant WBS Inc. never actually owned the Ratt trademark. The original 1985 partnership still did. The deli meeting? Meaningless. Bobby's corporate coup? Built on sand. His entire legal strategy collapsed in one discovery. Around late 2016, the court ruled against Bobby completely. Stephen Pearcy, Warren DeMartini, and Juan, the 3 remaining partners from the original 1985 agreement, voted to expel Bobby from the partnership entirely. He lost all rights to use the name Ratt. He couldn't tour as Ratt. He couldn't call himself a current member of Ratt. He could only refer to himself as a former member. That's it. But Bobby wasn't done fighting. Even after losing, he kept going. He posted online that it sure as hell ain't fucking over, and called his former bandmates lying thieves. He kept insisting he'd been wronged. He kept threatening more legal action. A couple years later, around 2018, the courts had enough. They dismissed all of Bobby's remaining claims and issued an order forbidding him from relitigating the case. They basically told him to stop filing lawsuits. It was over, done, finished. The drummer who tried to escape Warren's control by hijacking the entire band through a secret deli meeting ended up with nothing. No trademark, no band, no rights. Just massive legal bills and the word former permanently attached to his name. The brutal irony? Bobby always said he and Robin Crosby were the only reasonable guys in the band. When Robin died, the balance died with him. And Bobby's power struggle with Warren exploded into the war that destroyed everything. Bobby spent years, and probably hundreds of thousands in legal fees, trying to own a name that he legally couldn't have. All because of a signature that nobody remembered to get back in 1997. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming.
Now, you did announce, though, that you're going to have a guest appearance on drums with you that night. Is that correct?
Yeah, and people kind of figured it out. It was going to be, why not? I mean, bygones, bygones. It's no big deal. Just have fun, man. It's going to be a trip. Who knows? I don't know. We're just going to play, have a great time, and see what happens. If he shows up, way cool.
Years later, around 2021, Bobby Blotzer and Stephen Pearcy performed together at the Whiskey A Go-Go. All the lawsuits, all the insults, the crypt keeper, the blind mice, the deli setup, forgiven. Stephen called them fighting brothers who loved to hate each other. And just like that, they moved on. The drummer who tried to steal his own band learned you can't rewrite who actually owns the legacy. Bobby said it himself. We've had a million good times, had a couple million bad times. This was definitely one of the bad ones.
Smash that subscribe button right now. Don't just sit there. Join the crew, stay locked in, and let's keep the beat alive.